What's going on, guys? My name is RagingRaptor and I welcome you to a new World of Tanks preview video. And today we are going to have a look at the K-91-2, a tier 9 Soviet medium tank. What is going to happen with this vehicle, we don't know yet, but it looks like a very interesting vehicle, and it's a vehicle which actually got added in the second iteration of the 1.9 common test. And this actually means we can have a look at its armor model today. And this is also why I'm going to do today's video a little bit different, because we also don't really got the stats card as usually, because I don't know, something is a little bit wrong with this tank. Especially the looks of this tank. It looks, to me personally, very weird. Where exactly suddenly goes the engine, which was in the K91, or in the K91 at least, had to have the whole frontal part of the tank occupied. It doesn't really look like the K91-2 got elongated or something. So I'm a little bit confused what is going to happen, what is going on in this tank. Plus, where is the drive shaft? In general, to me personally, as an engineering student, it looks like a very weird concept to me. It's like a black hole inside. There have to be some things which just came apart. But yeah, let's jump into the general stats of this vehicle. The first thing you will notice is that this tank has 1750 hit points. Obviously, the whole armor and turret armor we are going to have a look at later on. But to the mobility, it has 50 kph top speed and 20 kph reverse speed, which are pretty good. To that we have a power to weight ratio of almost 17, which is also fairly decent. And with the hidden stats of the terrain resistances, this tank is almost equal as to the T55A. It has to be pointed out, however, that the T55A is faster in acceleration and driving up hills. It has 20 HP per ton ratio. But when it comes to soft stats, when it comes to turn rates of turrets as well as of your hull, it is almost identical to the T55A. So that is pretty neat. You will notice, however, the slowness in acceleration as you have for every HP per ton ratio less. To that you have your standard, or not really standard, 100mm Russian gun with 320 alpha. It isn't as standard as usually, as it has 246mm of base penetration with an APCR round, which is for tier 9 fairly unique and something you can look forward to. However, it also has 330mm of heat penetration, which is amazing when you consider that this is a tier 9 vehicle, meaning most heavily armored vehicles will have a pretty rough time against you, as you will just punch right through them. The DPM of this vehicle with 8.22 shots per minute is pretty decent as well, as you get around 2630 DPM, which is once again almost identical to what the T55A has. It has 2.1 seconds aim time, and it has accuracy values on the move which are roughly the same as of the Leopard PTA, which means it's very good in my personal opinion, or for what it should be, very decent. Point is, however, the aim time is longer than what the Leopard 1 has. So the Leopard 1 will be, Leopard PTA will be more consistent at aiming in as well and being quicker at getting those shots out. However, I do think that you will not have too big of a deal to shoot on the move and have reasonable success with this vehicle, especially as you are most likely going to use a vertical stabilizer. It is also interesting to note, in my opinion, that you have 5 degrees of gun depression, which isn't that good, but you have a fully traversable turret. Compared to the K91 on tier 10, you actually can turn your turret 360 degrees all around, while the normal K91 has a limited angle of around 110 to the left and 110 degrees to the right hand side. In general, this tank looks fairly interesting in my opinion. Yes, the view range isn't that good with just 390 meters, but I can live with that, personally speaking. What will be interesting, however, is this tank's armor. And I have to say, I am surprised how good it looks on the model viewer. So let's just jump into that. This is the armor model you have in the K-91-2, and as you can see, first of all, it is a forward-facing turret, but you will already notice that this part right here looks a lot thicker than you would maybe think of knowing from the normal K-91. It is 175 millimeters thick, with the lower plate being 182 millimeters of effective armor, or 135 millimeters of nominal armor. You can see it looks fairly angled. Obviously the upper plate values won't be too strong comparing it against same tiered opponents, but it looks fairly decent in my personal opinion. In general, you get the feeling that the K-91-2 is more of a heavy tank than a medium tank when it comes to the armor values. Because let's just look at the turret, and please keep in mind, this is a tier 9 vehicle, not a tier 10. When we look at the turret, yes, you can say that this cupola is fairly weak with just 200mm of nominal armor, giving it around 238 with effective armor because of the slopes, which is pretty decent. The same goes for the gun mantlet, which is 230mm thick and also nicely sloped. So are those parts over here, which are 230mm thick for a very long time, as you can see right here. As well as here we have some more spots which are just 200mm thick. You also have a cupola on the right hand side, which is also just 200mm thick, but because of its angle and its shaping, there can be a little bit more effective armor depending how you are hitting and hiding it. I do think that yes, 5 degrees of gun depression isn't all that much, but if you're knowing how to use them, those cupolas may or may not become fairly bouncy against same tiered opponents. In general, I do think that this tank will fare very decently as a top tier opponent, especially against tier 7 tanks. As against tier 7 tanks, most will have issues penetrating your upper as well as a lower plate. So that will be fun for you. Also, you can see I disabled the tracks to show you how the shaping is behind them, because I was thinking maybe those parts over here will be weak spots, like on other tanks, but they are not 90mm thick, meaning that on a flat surface you cannot detract this tank with damage. However, if this tank is driving over a hill or something, you will have a fair chance of damaging the tracks as well as damaging the tank, because you are shooting at an angle which won't be, auto bounce anymore. It depends really how the enemy player is playing this tank. Also, those plates are 150mm thick, and you can see they are at a sharp angle. So looking frontally, the tank's armor is, for a medium tank, fairly consistent and fairly good even. Also, you don't really have apparent flaws like very weak roof armor. It's all 40mm thick. This part over here is even 60mm thick, so this means that basically only the 183 guns of the British tank destroyer line can overmatch there with APs. The same goes for the rear of the armor. It's 40 and 45mm thick. The only super hard weak spots are down here, where it's just 20mm thick. Other than that, we have 30mm here, which might again make this tank really bouncy. Sure, it's just a small spot, but you will auto bounce there because of the angle, of the sharp angle. But don't forget, your side armor is just 80mm thick, so don't try to, well, you can side scrape, but don't forget this will reduce the effective armor of this part right here. And obviously, as soon as you have the side of the tank, it will be a fairly easy pen with just 80mm of armor. Nevertheless, I personally think that if you are a decent player and you know what you're doing, you can get a lot out of this turret. I do want to compare it quickly with the normal K-91 turret, but then again, please keep in mind that it is a different shaping, as you can see. The cupolas, however, are they are thicker. They are 20mm base thicker, and obviously they also have the rounding. But important to note is the upper hull plate armor is a lot thinner, with just 140mm compared to the 175mm. And the lower plate is thinner as well. However, those plates right here are actually a little bit thicker, but I think they are in a less acute angle, but I'm not entirely sure. And you can see that the side armor is also thinner on the normal K-91. I do personally think the K-91's turret is pretty decent for what it is supposed to be, and you can actually troll a lot of people with it because they're not used to seeing this vehicle. I do, however, think that overall the K-91-2's armor is better and more convenient to use. I still don't expect this tank to be an incredible bouncer or anything, like it doesn't have the hull of an E50, but it's fairly decent, and I think it will catch people off guard very, very frequently. I would even go out on a limb and say that this tank may or may not be a pretty decent rammer with this frontal armor plate. Maybe, however, this 40mm armor plate down here might be annoying and give you a lot of ram damage because of how ram damage is calculated. Nevertheless, in conclusion, with 1750 hit points, it looks very strong. It looks very, very strong. Obviously, we'll have to see when we get our hands on this tank, but so far, pretty decent. So, let's conclude this vehicle. I personally think it looks like a very interesting vehicle, maybe a little bit overtuned when it comes to the armor. Obviously, armor is hard to judge just on paper like this, because in the end, we don't know how is normalization going to affect this. Obviously, how is gun depression going to affect this? But just from the paper stats and from my personal experience, it looks fairly decent, and it is something on par with tanks like the Kampfpanzer 50. And this segues me to my assumption that this tank most likely could be a ranked reward. The ranked reward for 2021. Because it looks like from the gameplay wise or gameplay style wise that it's fairly equal or will be fairly equal to the Kampfpanzer 50T. The Kampfpanzer 50T has a pretty decent hull. It's nothing amazing, but it's pretty decent. It has a fairly good turret with obviously one major weak spot, but it's not that bad. It has also a 320 Alpha gun, and it's fairly mobile, which the Soviet medium tank all checks off as well. However, obviously the K-91-2 is not as accurate as you probably might think, and it's not as accurate as the Kampfpanzer 50T. However, it does have a lot more DPM than the Kampfpanzer 50T, which is fairly interesting in my personal opinion. It may or may not also be a tank for the Bond's shop, because don't forget, when the next season of Ranked will start, Wargaming will rotate the Bond shop. They already discussed that. We sadly do not know what tanks will be coming, but this could be a potential vehicle in the Bond shop, you know. But in the end, we shouldn't forget there are 4 other tier 9 reward tanks in the game files with, well, things yet we don't know what is going to happen. Heck, the K-91-2 might even become the tank in front of the K-91. Would also make sense in my opinion. But I do think the Object 430 version 2 is a little bit of a better fit, just from gameplay wise and from armor wise. So yeah, if you enjoyed this video, let me know with a thumbs up, and if you're new to the channel, then consider subscribing. We are going to have a look at weekly news once again on Friday, and I have a banger for you. We are going to have a look at the armor model of the Concept 1B, because yes, the tank is added to the test server, you know, meaning we can have a look at the armor model again of a completely new vehicle. And it looks very interesting, especially with its duck bill and its super narrow turret. But yeah, thank you so much for watching. My name is RagingRaptor, and I hope to see you in another video. Cheers guys, stay safe and stay at home if possible.